Ready to elevate your life? Join me on the Vitality Vibe podcast for inspiring conversations on holistic wellness, personal growth, and sustainable success while nourishing your body, mind, and soul. It's time to reclaim your radiance. In the blue zone of Ikaria, Greece, the residents believe that the only reason they live past 100 years is not because of what they eat, but because every night a chair is sat at their table, hoping that somebody they don't know shows up and shares that meal with them. They never ask each other, "What did you eat last night?" but always ask, "Who did you eat with last night?" My hope with this podcast is that you leave a seat open at your table and welcome today's guest to your meal in a toast to the biodiversity of your nourishment. Listeners, prepare for a seismic shift in your perspective. Today on the Vitality Vibe podcast, we're unleashing a force of nature, a master strategist, a human performance architect, and a beacon of unyielding resilience. Get ready to dismantle your limitations because we're about to embark on a journey with a true legend. So imagine a quarter century of honed leadership, forged in the fires of military service, where optimizing teams and inspiring the impossible isn't just a goal, it's a way of life. Now envision that same powerhouse transformed into a dynamic performance coach, igniting the spark of potential within every individual he encounters. Well, that's Mark Hurst, and he's not here to whisper sweet nothings. He's here to equip you with the strategic blueprints to conquer your challenges, illuminate your path to clarity and confidence, and transform the scars of adversity into fuel for unstoppable growth. Are you ready to transcend the ordinary and seize your potential? Well, it's time to elevate your life and rediscover your inner radiance. Join me on the Vitality Vibe podcast for inspiring conversations on holistic wellness, personal growth, and sustainable success. And today, join me as we welcome the extraordinary Mark Hurst to the Vitality Vibe podcast, for what's sure to be an inspiring conversation on anti-fragility, personal growth, and sustainable success. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Vitality Vibe podcast. And today I am honored and so excited to bring you Mark Hurst. Mark, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here with you.
Yeah. So Mark and I met when we both did the heroic workshop facilitator training in Phoenix back in October. And we were in the same small group. And it was a really special small group, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I loved every minute of it. I think you might remember this, but I said I wanted to pick you guys up and bring you home with me and just hang out with you all the time. I think we could definitely change the world together if we could be together every day. And definitely, it would change my life. I know that.
Well, for sure. And, I'm super excited to bring you on because you are working to change the world one person at a time in your own corner. And so let's jump right in. My first question for you is, what is one of the most challenging periods of your life that you faced, and how did you emerge from it stronger?
Okay. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say thank you for asking this question and giving it to me prior to this, because it really made me dive into a long period of time, about 40 years of my life, and say, what's the right story for this, right? And what it ends up being is really a story within a story. And this is where I'm going to give you credit. I call it my Jacob story now. So if you're familiar with the Bible and Jacob, and he wanted to marry Rachel, he had to work 7 years, and then he was tricked into marrying Rachel's older sister, Leah, and then he worked another 7 years, right? This will come into play, and you'll understand why as I tell the story. But in the middle of the story is really the big one that I think you're that made a significant impact. But the rest of the story on either side of that, I think, is significant too. And so starts when I'm about 10 years old. When I was 10, my dad, my biological father, kind of cut all ties with me.
Mm.
Was when I was 10 years old. So what that led to was kind of a teenage years of um, kind of both good and bad, not being good enough. Um, on a bad side, on my academics, kind of accepted the fact that I'm not good enough. But on the athletic side, it had an opposite effect. It was like, I'm going to prove that I'm good enough, right? And so kind of made it through the teenage years, and I was about 17 years old, and I was in the driveway one day. There was a lot of anger going on during that time frame as well. I was in the driveway one day, and the guy they call my dad, my stepfather, was sitting there with me, and he said, "You know, the only person that your anger is hurting is you." He said, "Your biological father has no idea that he's hurt you." You know, and on that day, and standing in the driveway, like it dawned on me, like I'm the only person I'm hurting right now. What he said is me, right? And I just decided to forgive. You know, I said, "I forgive you. I'm not going to carry this with me anymore. I'm not going to let this weigh me down." And no kidding, physically felt like I dropped a rucksack, right? 100-pound rucksack. And this huge weight is lifted off my shoulders. So that's kind of the first 7 years, right? So 10 years, 17 is when that happened. And then, I kind of went about my life, graduated high school, went to college, joined the military, um, and was doing good things. Life wasn't perfect like everybody's, it was perfectly imperfect. And for whatever reason, I decided that um, just the forgiveness wasn't enough.
Mm.
I needed to do something else, right? So I called my aunt, and I said, "Hey, what is my biological father's phone number?" She gave it to me, and I called him. Uh, and so he answers the phone, and he says hello. I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he goes, "Who's this?" I said, "This is Mark." And he goes, "Mark who?" And I just paused, and he goes, "Oh, Mark."
Mm.
And we had, about an hour long conversation. And the gist of the conversation, and the reason why I called him, was, one, I felt like, okay, the forgiveness wasn't complete yet. You know, not that it was holding me back anymore, but it wasn't complete. Um, and I called him to say, "Hey, look, I'm not looking for anything. I don't necessarily want anything from you. Um, and I just want you to know that, one day I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. Um, and if you want to be a part of that, I'm open to a relationship with you." Yeah. So I was 24 years old when that happened. Seven, seven, second 7 years, right? 24 years old. So what's significant about that is a month later, I met the woman that has been my wife for 26 years now, right? So that's the first 7 years. Continue on with life. Me and Melanie get married. We have one child. Again, perfectly imperfect, right? A lot of good, but a lot of struggle, a lot of junk as well. And we kind of reached the the middle of the story now, right? And I'm 31 years old, and again, 7 years later, I'm in Afghanistan for the fifth time. This is 2004, and I'm on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And we're moving under the cover of the darkness, and we get ambushed. I'm in the back of a highly mobile, multi-wheeled vehicle, also known as a Humvee, and a rocket-propelled grenade explodes over my head. Um, I have a softball size hole in my shoulder, a golf ball size hole in my back, about a 2.5 inch hole in my neck, and ultimately shrapnel bounced off my cheekbone through my left eye and severed my optical nerve. And so my left eye is a prosthetic eye, right? Um, Go through, get taken out of Afghanistan, go into recovery, uh, a couple different locations in Afghanistan at first, and then to Germany where Melanie meets me. And then we go to a couple different places in the United States, ultimately end up in San Antonio where they remove my eye. I fully recover all of those things, and then get home about 5 weeks later. We get home. Melanie is with me the whole time, 24 hours a day. She's like my caregiver, my driver, and just taking care of me. Um, and then we get home, and she has to go back to work. She takes the keys to all the cars because she doesn't want me to drive. She has to, test me out on driving still. She's not comfortable. And I'm home alone for the first time in 5 weeks after getting blown up in combat, right? And um, to say I had a meltdown is an understatement. I was just standing there at the back of our house, looking out the back porch, and just lost it. I went in one of those moments where you ask why me. What did I do to deserve this? And I've often in the past described it as being in a cage match with God for about 4 hours. You know, just I was a high speed come apart, and over and over again, just asking why and what did I do, and now what. And at the end of that cage match, ultimately what I heard was, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you do. you know and so with a lot of it took a lot of fight and a lot of help from a lot of people. I'd been in the Air Force for 10 years at that time, and um, there were some people who didn't want me to stay in the Air Force. They wanted me to go find something else to do. And with the support of Melanie and my desire, and leaders who asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to stay in. I still have um, a desire to serve. And I don't necessarily care what it looks like. Just give me an opportunity, and we'll go from there. And so a lot of people were fighting for me, and I eventually was able to not only stay in the Air Force, but to continue to serve in the role that I was serving in. I actually did return to combat 3 times following being injured. And like I said, not without the help of a ton of people. And I ended up doing almost 25 years in the Air Force before I retired. Right. So that's 7-year number 4 when I was 31. When I was 38, I was promoted to the highest enlisted rank in the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant. So, obviously a lot of success following being injured as well, contributing, loving every day. I felt blessed that I didn't necessarily have a job. I just had meaningful work to do every day with incredible people, and I happened to get paid for it. It was amazing. Another 7 years, and just kind of looking at the atmospherics of the family, and we'd done almost 25 years at this point, and we decided that it's time to hang up the uniform and retire. And so did that, and um, ventured out on climbing the second mountain, if you will. If you know that book, right? Um, Although I think the second mountain might have started when I was 31, when after I got injured in combat. And then now we talked about this before. For the last several months, I've been working on human performance coaching, body, mind, performance excellence, working with athletes, trying to expand that to anybody who who wants to do things better than they do them now, right? Or just wants to have a relationship that builds to better, building that practice as we go. Uh, guess what year we are in? Year 7, by the way.
That's amazing.
That's my Jacob story, right? Every 7 years, significant things happen. So, and thank you for asking the question, because I didn't recognize that until I actually started looking at all of the stories. So it was only a couple of days ago that I recognized that that is my Jacob story.
That's so, that just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. Yeah, it did when I recognized it too. I was like, what in the world is going on?
Right?
This is crazy. Every 7 years, something
Right.
something significant, And obviously there's things in between all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
I call that the meantime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, something good is gonna happen in our lives. And in the meantime, we just got to keep growing, right? Keep
Mm-hmm.
paddling.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll get there.
Well,
So
your outlook is, first of all, let's just take a moment and thank you for your service. Thank you.
thank you for your support.
Yeah. I mean, how courageous it was for you to go back after that. And then the way that you viewed what you were doing
Mm,
is just remarkable, really remarkable. And I think that it just goes to show that I think that there is going to be a sequence of several more 7 years for you.
hopefully,
You you are here for a big purpose.
purpose. Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
all are. We're all here
Mm-hmm.
for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we just got to find it and follow it. You know.
Well, and I love your story because I think like you highlight the fact that you didn't, there were many times you didn't know.
Mhm.
You just kind of kept plugging away.
Yeah,
And and life wasn't perfect. I like how you say that it wasn't perfect. It was
yeah,
perfectly imperfect a lot of the time.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I'll share with you this. The right before I was injured, right? Me and Melanie's relationship was a complete disaster,
Mm.
complete mess, and getting blown up when it was so bad that getting blown up in combat was probably the only thing that saved it.
Mm.
And so I'm actually grateful that it happened,
Mm.
because we needed, we'd been going years with, in some cases, because she was in the military at the time too,
Mm.
some cases just high-fiving over the weekend, handing the baby off,
Mm.
and she would go to training, and then she would come back, and I would go back to combat. Um, and in some cases, like in 2003, she was in Kuwait and I was in Saudi Arabia. We went into Iraq from two different directions together, and our oldest daughter was with my parents. So as uh, as bad as it might have been, it was the greatest thing for us,
Mm.
right? It saved our relationship, and we spent 5 weeks together, 24 hours a day, all day, every day, and we hadn't done that in years, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we got back on the same page, thankfully.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's really beautiful. And again, it highlights what how many sacrifices as being in the military. Um, so many sacrifices for our well-being and our safety. So again, thank you.
yeah.
Because I just can't imagine. I can't imagine.
So yeah, you're right. There are a ton of sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
serving in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, which I don't think people talk about enough, is there just a tremendous amount of opportunity as well. We've lived in multiple countries, traveled the world,
Mm-hmm.
raised our kids in different cultures, and there are better little humans today because of it. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, thank you for the sacrifices they made when I retired. And I said, in the end, I hope it's not the sacrifice that you remember, but the opportunities we had
Mm-hmm.
around the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think they do. I
Yeah.
think they understand it. I think they know that, especially when you move to the small town that we live in now,
Mm-hmm.
and you run across people who the only place they've ever been is this small little town, right? And they've been to France and they've been to, Czech Republic and the Netherlands and Spain and all over Europe. They've been all over the United States. They've lived and they
Mm-hmm.
met people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they get it.
Mm-hmm.
So. I do always appreciate it when people say, thanks for your sacrifice. But I also try to remind people that with that sacrifice comes a tremendous amount of opportunity, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and thank you for highlighting that in the sense that I think that you are inherently always looking for, how is this situation, whatever it may be, making me stronger right now.
mm, yeah, I think for a lot of years it was by accident. And now it's on purpose, obviously,
Yeah.
by our experiences and, our association with Heroic and Brian and the entire Heroic team.
Mm-hmm.
We are constantly reminded that
Mm-hmm.
we need to be on purpose, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so grateful.
Oh.
Grateful that I happened upon Brian Johnson when it's been about 10 years now, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, speaking of Brian, that leads me to the second question. And thank you again for sharing that story of your life. Really remarkable. And going through that, you highlighted some of the guides, some of the people that were
Hmm.
there for you. Are there any others throughout your life or anybody else that you can think of that has really been pivotal in
Hmm.
your journey?
Well, I'm going to come nowhere close to um, highlighting all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've felt for a long time, even before I um, was associated with Heroic,
Mm-hmm.
even when I was younger, I've always felt like I was surrounded by genius. So surrounded by people that were just incredible, whether it was my mom, my stepfather. One of the ones I'll highlight is my grandfather. My grandfather, he taught me consistency and discipline, um, and putting others first, right? He's 89 years old. He just turned 89 a few weeks ago.
Oh.
Um, he gets up in the morning. And first off, he goes to bed at 10 o'clock and he wakes up at 6 o'clock. He's been doing it for like 50 years, right? So consistency,
Mm-hmm.
he's a model of consistency. He gets up, he goes and walks 2 to 5 miles. Even now, even today, at 89 years old, he eats at the same time every day. He's consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that we study with Heroic is how do we dial it in so that we are maximizing every little bit of time and space and if I eat 30 minutes later, what does it do to me
Mm-hmm.
compared to if I stay on the schedule? If I sleep 1 hour less or 2 hours less, what happens then,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I think about the protocol, for example, I think about my grandfather, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the way he has a protocol, whether he planned to design it or not.
Right.
He does, right? Uh, Guide, Jesus, humility, service, and purpose. You know, that's what when I think of Jesus, that's what I think of. Uh, Stay humble, um, always give, always serve, no matter what, and always have a purpose that's bigger than myself. You know, so um, I had an interaction. I didn't really talk about this mentor, but um, uh, when I was in high school, I wrestled for 4 years. And the very first year was a struggle. I didn't wrestle one match. Um, I went out because I was too small to play football. Hadn't really played a lot of baseball, and everybody said, "Hey, if you want to get involved with sports, uh, little guy like you probably would do good at wrestling." So I went out to wrestle, and I don't know, about a month in, I decided, I'm gonna take a week off. So I took a week off, and then the next Monday I came back, and the Coach Britton, about 6'5", 250 pounds. He's also a history teacher. He came up real close to me, and he goes, "Hey, where were you last week?" And I go, Coach, I just had some things to do. And he goes, real quiet, comes up, whispers in my ear. He says, "Well, if you ever have some other things to do, you can just consider yourself off the team." And I never missed another practice for the next 4 years, right? The next 2 years, I was the most dedicated wrestler on the team. And then the last year ended great with everything. Um, but I didn't recognize immediately what an incredible impact that was. I've recently read the book 10 to 25, where you talk about inspiring those age groups, right? And that idea of high expectation, but at the same time, he was always there to support, always there to help. Multiple summer trips where he was driving me and a couple other wrestlers to wrestling camps all over the nation. High expectations, high support. Incredible mentor of mine. Um, I think I think a lot of people wake up in the morning and they go on a search for what courage and leadership look like. They try to find it in their day to day, right? I've been pretty fortunate to all I have to do is wake up and roll over, because courage and leadership sleeps next to me every night.
Mm.
And I'll continue on so that we don't get out of control here. Bruce,
Let's just put a bookmark in that, because I love how you highlight that high standards and high support, high warmth, and how you probably bring that to your athletes, right? Like,
try to, yeah.
I mean, that's what's, I think, so beautiful about mentors and guides, is that we adopt, they inspire us to behave in ways, and we pass it on to others. Mm-hmm. So he was impacting you then. And, did he have any idea that this would impact athletes how many years later?
Yeah.
Right?
Probably not, because that's not why he did it.
Exactly. Right?
He was doing it just to impact one person.
Yeah.
Same reason why we do what we do.
Yeah.
We just want to impact one person. It's not necessary. We don't think about the ripple effect necessarily, but there is.
Like you said, so many people get so kind of obsessed about finding their purpose, finding their reason. And, like, if you just do those things daily, that consistency, like your grandfather, showing up and impacting people, your purpose builds itself, I think, kind of.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I don't, as we spoke through that, I kind of transitioned into the courage and leadership, and didn't really say her name, but that's obviously my wife. She's my guide, my mentor as well. And those are the things that I take from her, so I didn't want to miss that, or confuse it, that it was kind of all one, when it was really two more guides and mentors. So there's a guy by the name of Bruce Voigt, and when I told you the story of staying in the Air Force, tenacity and fight are the things that come to me for Bruce Voigt, and because he is one of just a few people that made sure that not only I stayed in, but that I stayed in my career field,
Mm.
um, and that I had the opportunity to go back and deploy again.
Mm.
Um, and I remember when he came to me, he said, "Hey," because there was a waiver process, and one of the things in the waiver was that I could not deploy anymore.
Mm.
And so he came in one day. He's like, "Hey, I need a squadron superintendent over in Iraq in a month and a half. You want to go?" I
Mm.
said, "Sure, I'd love to go, but my waiver says that I can't, I can't deploy." And
Mm.
he says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, don't worry about that." I said, "Okay, well, I probably should go talk to the young lady that was on the other end of the phone call the last time I went and make sure that she's okay with it." So I went home that night and I asked Melanie to sit down. So we sat down at the table and the conversation was literally this long. I said, "I want to go back." And she just said, "Okay." She supported me, you know? And that's where the courage comes from, right? Because I don't know if I would have had that much courage had our roles been switched, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And
Mm.
so a month later, I was in Iraq again, you know, and about a year after that, I was back in Afghanistan, where back where I was injured. So
Mm.
yeah, good stuff. And then the last one, um, believe it or not, uh, my kids, my kids are my mentors. You know, teach me teach me how to love every day. They teach me kindness uh, and perspective and um, unending support. You
Mm.
know, I cannot tell you the number of times over the last 3 or 4 months as we've been trying to stand up Forge and um, get contracts and get the word out, where they've just come and said, "We believe in you."
Oh, mm. That
Yeah,
hits. That hits.
yeah. So they're incredible.
Mm.
They inspire me every day. I'm lucky
Thank
to get to hang
you.
out with them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's, so often we think of mentors as somebody ahead of us, somebody, and you're saying, no, it's my kids who, I guess in ways they're probably ahead of us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But we always think that that's our role towards them, is to be their mentor, and
yeah,
that they can actually be our mentors, our guides, our biggest
absolutely.
supporters. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we overlook younger people
Mm.
and the opportunity to learn from them.
Mm.
And there's so many opportunities to learn from them. You know, there
Mm.
really is.
Mm.
But we miss it because you're right. We look for the sage or somebody older than us that has walked the path. You
Mm.
know, I, my son comes to mind because sometimes we'll do projects around the house, and I kind of have an idea of how this project is going to go. And if I'm patient enough and I slow down enough, he always teaches me something, like a different way, right? He always teaches me something. Um, but I have to remember to slow down and be open to a different way. You know,
Mm.
usually it's bad when I'm not, but it usually ends with, "We're going to do it this way."
Well, and I think you say something that kind of has a thread through your whole story, which is slowing down, being patient, being open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so much of, like, that wrestling match that you had with God,
Hmm.
you kind of had to slow down and just be there and be open
Just
to it,
listen.
didn't you?
Yeah. Just listen.
Yeah, that's really valuable.
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
your kids are so lucky.
I'm lucky. What are you talking about? They're awesome.
Oh. Well, as you're talking about this journey, and your mentors and your guides, what traditions or rituals or things keep Mark on track? What are the things that really help you?
As I thought about that question, the thing that jumped out at me, the one word that jumped out at me was beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a two-sided coin for me. The beliefs I had as a teenager were, I have what I have. I am what I am. I was born with it. Um, I either have it or I don't, you know, in many ways. Um, I did not do well in school academically at all. And I didn't think I was intelligent as a teenager. I really didn't. I knew I could work hard from wrestling, but I didn't think I was smart, right? I didn't think I was intelligent at all. And where that coin kind of flips over to the other side is as I enter life and adulthood and actually go take that work ethic out into society. And I quickly start to realize, maybe the education thing wasn't um, oh, what do I always say? I'm gonna forget it. Um, Aptitude problem. It was an application problem. I just didn't apply myself, right? And so gradually over time, and this took a significant amount of time into adulthood, where I was like, you know what? I'm not as dumb as I think I am, right? And I started applying myself. Uh, I've always had this thought of, uh, or I've always been curious about why people do the things they do, including myself. Why do I do things, either positive or dumb stuff that I've done? Why do I do that? Right. And then the same with as I look out at other people. And then the more experiences I got, I started to think, well, why does, for example, the combat situation, there were several of us, all of us survived, thankfully. But why did that impact me in the way that it did that led to post-traumatic growth? Whereas in other cases, it led to stress, right? Same situation, same experiences, different result, right? And I've always been very curious about that. Um, and then even from particularly on the physical athletic side, how can when I was an athlete in high school, how can I be the best athlete I could be, right? And that has just kind of carried over into adult being curious about how do I get just a little bit better today, every single day, wake up, recommit to it. How do I get a little bit better today? You know, and you know how life is. That ebbs and flows. Some days you're on fire, and then sometimes you go through seasons of blah. And then you reignite it and continue on. Um, but where I'm at today, of just figuring out what's adding value and what's not. Eliminate the things that don't add value and do more of the things that add value, and then just continuously trying to dial it in. Can I make it any better? Can I make it any better? Right. And that's what I love about our work with Heroic, right? Is because none of us know everything, but every day you just get a little bit more, right? And you apply it a little bit more. And even I find even now, after 10 years of Heroic, or it's, optimized before that, there's things that I'm rereading every single day that I get something else out that I didn't get last time, you know? And so it's almost like it doesn't matter how many times you read it, you're going to find it's going to apply differently today than it did, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because you're just in a different place and now you can use it in a different way, right? Um, maybe it didn't stick back then because I wasn't ready for it,
Mhm.
and now my readiness level is high, or I wasn't willing, right? Readiness and willingness. Got to
Mhm.
have both, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, so I don't know if that answers the question necessarily, but
Yeah.
that one was kind of difficult for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I think you answered it beautifully in the sense that, that continual perpetual curiosity on
yeah,
how can I grow today?
yeah.
And I think that's just a beautiful question. And I love how you highlighted the fact that, when you were a kid, you thought this was it. This is what you had. These were your talents.
Yeah.
And that through experience, you learned, no, I have more potential
There's
than I'm
more.
giving
Yeah,
myself credit for.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
And I think,
Yeah.
obviously some of your experiences and your guides have helped you to see that. But I think ultimately it's that, you saw in one area of your life, maybe the athletics, if you applied yourself
Mm.
and you said, hey, I bet I could do this to other areas of my life as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think
Absolutely.
that's so, so wonderful. And it's so important. I think, I remember feeling that way as a kid, that's my sister was very musically talented.
Hmm.
And I say that I don't have that part of the brain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I bet if I applied myself like she applied herself, maybe I would have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just and I think it's what lights you up to apply yourself to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. You got to find
Right.
what you're passionate about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, you have just a background that is so rich, and you are helping kids and athletes. Tell us a little bit about the Forge program, and how that was born, and what it is, and how you're changing lives there.
so it's been about 3 years now, but my daughter was in her last year of college, my oldest daughter. I
Mm-hmm.
have three kids, two girls. The oldest is a girl, the youngest is a girl, and a boy in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And she called one day from college and she said, Dad, I got a great idea. Um, you need to buy some land, build a facility, and we need to, train young girls in softball so that they can have the same opportunities that I've had to travel the world playing softball and um, potentially go to college and have it paid for and all that. I was like, that's a great idea. Awesome. And kind of they kind of just sat there, right? The seed planted the seed.
Mm-hmm.
About a year later, she came home. Um, about that time, my youngest daughter decided she wanted to play softball. And my oldest daughter started when she was 6. So my youngest daughter is now 11. She's 13 now, but so a couple years ago when she started, she was 11. I took her to practice. We showed up about 45 minutes early. We warmed up, and we were the only two there. Um, so we're warm up for 45 minutes. Everybody else kind of shows up and watching us. And so I take her over to meet the gang, and the coach is like, hey, you want to help out? And I said, sure, I'll help. You're the head coach, but you tell me what you want me to do. I'll help. I've been around softball for at that point, 17 years. Um, and had coached a little bit in the past as well. Um, and so that was opportunity number one, right? My daughter starts coaching at the high school across the street and um, comes home one day and says, hey, Dad, I talked to the head coach today and I told him that you'd be a good addition to the coaching staff. I said, oh, you did really? You might want to talk to me about that before you do something like that. And so I sat on that for a couple weeks and I because I was comfortable. My schedule was the way I wanted it to be, and I just everything was good. I didn't want to go adding something to my schedule, but sat on it for a couple of weeks. I thought about it and I said, okay, I'll meet with the coach. So I went to lunch with him, said, tell me about what you're trying to accomplish. And we'll kind of go from there now. Cause I didn't want to, if it wasn't about the girls, if it wasn't about the athletes, and not just making them great athletes, but making them, you know, exceptional, 25, 35-year-old moms and CEOs of companies and, productive citizens, just really optimizing and helping them become the very best version of themselves they could be, then I wasn't going to rearrange my life to be a part of it. And from the very beginning, I was convinced that it's about winning, not winning in the sense of games, but winning in the sense of life, right? And I said I could be a part of that, and so joined the staff last year, mainly focused on mindset. I'm taking the things we talk about and do in Heroic, the tools, and I incrementally just give them a little tool here and there. So I work on the mindset piece of it a lot. Got excited over the season. My daughter was still living with me last spring, and we said, hey, now might be a good time to start a development program. Because, oh, by the way, we live in a city that has a tradition of not a great tradition of softball, right? So it's not like we've taken over, 10-time state championship team. It's not that. It's the opposite. Not a bad thing, right? Just need to change what we're doing. Right? What we've been doing for years and years and years is not working. So we need to change what we're doing because it's not the athletes. We just need to change the way we get them there, right? So we decided to do this development thing. We started in June of last summer, and we just had an information meeting, put it out there. We got basically 24 girls. 12 of them were 14U, 12 of them were 12U. And we started in August. Long-term plan is we kind of looked at the end in mind, and this isn't necessarily the end, but the oldest girls we got were 10 years from graduated from college, right? So 10 years is our focus. What do we want 10 years from now to look like? These girls are graduating from college, hopefully playing softball if they wanted to in college, right? And we back that up from there and go to 6 years from now, which is when they're going to college. What do we need to do from now till then to give them the opportunity to be a college athlete if that's what they want, and then I backed it up to 3 years and said, if we really want to do this right, we have to have a facility where we can focus on all three elements, right? Which is body. So physically get my body right, strength and conditioning, all of that, mindset. So a classroom where we can do tools and talk about the mindset of a elite athlete and build that continuously. And then an area where we can work on performance, the skills of softball. So that is, kind of 2.5 years from now is kind of the focus. We want to do that. We want to build that. And we're just getting after it. When we went in October to Phoenix for the workshop trainer course, what you guys inspired me to think about while I was there was why only 40 athletes in this little small town. Why can't you do that and inspire some other people, maybe some adults who are struggling right now, or maybe some adults who are succeeding wildly right now, but want to remain that way, right? One of I think you read this in the bio, but one of the offerings that I have is work is not supposed to suck. I mean, the number of people that go to work every day and all they do is just watch the clock, wait till, whatever quitting time is. And not only today, but they do that over and over and over again. I want to help those people. Work's not supposed to suck,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Tragedy happens in life, and I want to help those people to triumph over that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously helping somebody that is, kind of at the normal level and just wants to take it to the next level over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we have clarity and confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the triumph over tragedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The model for that is the same exact model for shining through success, right? So sometimes when we succeed, we see this all the time. People that are extremely successful and they just have a train wreck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for a variety of reasons. Some people a lot of people can't handle success.
Mm-hmm.
But the same model of getting out of, overcoming tragedy is
Mm-hmm.
the same model you use for shining through success, right? And I don't know. I don't know who's out there that needs that. Um, but I want to come alongside them where they're at, and I want to help them if we can.
Well, I think that you are that person for so many, and that because of that, you're going to find many more that you'll be able to come alongside of.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that story about how you just followed that urging, that encouragement from your daughter, got out of your comfort zone, right?
Mm.
And then decided that, you know, that growth was there, that potential was there.
The
Just like,
opportunities there,
yeah, just
yeah.
like young Mark, who didn't think he was smart,
Yep. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's
I,
all,
I will tell you that as this thing has started to take off,
mhm.
at no point do I think I'm in charge of this. There's
Oh,
somebody bigger is in charge of this, right?
so cool. Yeah.
And I'm just being faithful. I'm just listening, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of the reason why we were talking earlier about, the contract not being quite in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought we were going to be good, and we're going to have our first contract executing that in a couple weeks, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to happen, but I have faith that it will happen at some point, and I think it comes from that I know that I'm not necessarily in charge of this. I'm just doing what I'm told to do,
Mm.
you know. So
Well, and doesn't that, I mean, ultimately, when we let go like that and just say, okay,
mhm.
use me, put me to
Yeah,
work, that
yeah,
feels so good.
absolutely.
As opposed to, oh my gosh, it is up to me. I've got to do this. I've got to control this. I've got to,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So much nicer to just say, all right, obviously, I'm just I'm just the helper here. Show me the way.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you highlighted there your kind of your three areas that you speak. And
Hmm.
so I would just like to reiterate that for our listeners because you would be a phenomenal speaker to bring in, talking about clarity and confidence, triumph over tragedy, or why work is not supposed to suck.
Yeah.
And so I know that you said that, email is the best way to get a hold of you. So I'll make sure and have your email in the show notes. And for our listeners, if you're interested in contacting Mark or you have questions, send him an email or contact me and I can put you in touch with him.
Laura, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Like our time in Phoenix, I don't want it to end.
Right.
But I know you probably have things to do, and I got a few athletes waiting on the softball field for me.
There you go, right?
So I'm gonna get after that. But thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for shining your light in the world. Thanks for sharing with us a little piece of the magic that you bring to the world. So we really appreciate you. And we're glad you're out there forging the positive world that you want to see.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, listeners, thanks for being with us on the Vitality Vibe. We hope that today's podcast helps you reclaim some of your radiance, and we'll see you on the next episode.